Welcome to the Pact of Centradigon. It's my first game project and I've now been working on it for a little bit over a year. In the last video I said that I would work on a new collision system and enemies that use it, and that is precisely what I did. Shortly before the Christmas break began, I spent a few days working on a new collision system, which ended up being way better than what I had before. I then spent, I think, a bit over a week working on an enemy system which has all of the basic components that I think this game is going to need. Of course, there's also a new level, which is what I spent the vast majority of my time on. You see the level right here, it's called Sartoria, and it's the biggest one I've done so far. I actually wanted it to be very similar to the sheep level in terms of size, but it just got out of control, and I'll talk a bit more about it after the combat. When I revealed the game, this is the level that I showed, and it's currently very similar to how it was before. There is now a different post-processing filter, and there is a different rock texture, and there is a different shader applied to the foliage. But other than that, it's basically the same as it was before, so instead I'm gonna talk about the combat and try to explain why it's really not that special yet. Contrary to what the video title might suggest, I only spent a fraction of my time on enemies and the combat system. Rather than making a complicated enemy, I just made a mushroom. And with the mushroom, I implemented the core of what I thought the combat needed to work in this game, which is otherwise a 3D platformer. I'm talking about things like having hitboxes and hurtboxes that interact, having poise and shields, and having a bunch of states for the enemies that they switch between, like finding the player, walking around aimlessly, and being aggressive. So it's an enemy system and not really an enemy design, because a design would imply that there's actually some interesting gameplay happening. Hitting them is a lot of fun, but they themselves are basically just defenseless Goombas, just existing and being angry. After some time, bouncing them around worked pretty well. That's when I knew, okay, this is probably gonna work. How about I save the complicated enemies for later and now just make a new level? So again, this level is called Sartoria, and it is of course based on Asia and primarily Mongolia and China. I built this level with an asset-first approach, where the first step was to make most of the objects, then most of the buildings, and then the next step was to model all the terrain and to use the buildings to get the scale just right. I drew the map on February 2nd, and as of recording this, it is March 7th, so it took a bit over a month to put it all together. So, while the enemies are basically just Goombas, they run on top of a system that should make it very easy to add intelligence to their behavior and to make them respond to their emotions in entirely different ways. What you see here is the code that defines what a Shroomdle is, and it's just a generic enemy that has certain moves slotted in. For the vast majority of enemies in the game, the only thing that they will need to really touch is the aggressive move. The aggressive move triggers when an enemy sees the player or when you attack an enemy, and this move can be as simple as just walking towards the player and being angry, or it can be as complicated as an enemy from Dragon's Dogma 2. I'm of course not gonna be making an enemy that is that complicated, but technically speaking, the option is there. This town you see right now is Catria. Sartoria consists of 3 different nations that are all enclosed within the same walls. When humanity was too young to defend itself against outside threats, the cats built a great wall to protect them. But when humanity grew older and nations started to form, these great walls became a prison, and inside, endless fighting ensued. At some point, a great dragon decided to settle within these war-torn lands. Rather than to fly away and escape the violence, he stayed and taught the rival nations that they don't actually have to be at war. And these nations are all present in the level. What you see right now is Catria, which is where the followers of the ancient cats live. And soon I'll show Dragon Valley and a village in the mountains where some farmers live. Right now, a challenge in designing the levels is deciding what kind of nonsense I allow. Mario games rely on complete nonsense like floating bricks to build a lot of their platforming challenges. And it works really well in that series, but in my own game I want to go for a more natural approach, where most things do mostly make sense, but of course I am taking a lot of liberties in other ways. Notably how I scale certain objects. In this area there are some big balls of rope and also some very large broomsticks, and in other areas there are some massive chopsticks and big bowls of rice and massive mushrooms and cows that you can bounce on, and various other random objects that are scaled up to the point where you can jump on them. It is difficult to draw the line sometimes. Like in the sheep level, I think I made a lot of objects way too big, and I'm much happier with how this level ended up. And this is Dragon Valley. Like Gatria, the architecture of this town is also inspired by Chinese architecture. I would look at a few reference images of buildings to understand the shape, and then I would build my own pillars and my own windows and other components, and the result is that these buildings look pretty different from what originally inspired them. It was by making buildings for a few weeks that I developed an even stronger admiration for art and architecture, and I also developed a much deeper hatred for generative AI. If you are ever curious why artists seem to dislike AI to a pretty curious degree, try to make some art for a few weeks and you will understand. If you view art as an end product and nothing else, you are completely missing the point. There are so many human aspects to art that are just purged from existence the moment that you let an AI do it for you. Art can be used to convey some very deep emotions you have, or it can help you discover something about yourself that you didn't even understand. Art can also just exist to look pretty, or you can create art just as a form of practice. All of these things vary a lot from artwork to artwork, of course. Like, there's a lot more meaning in my music than there is meaning in a random rock that I make or a random tree. Some things are just meant to look pretty, some things are meant to actually convey an important message. But in any case, letting an AI take away your ability to create things yourself is not the wisest decision. I can assure you that I will never sell my humanity to Sam Altman, and everything in this game will remain handcrafted by me. Also, I assume most of you are under the age of 80, in which case there is more than enough time to learn whatever skill you might want to learn. As long as you accept that your earliest works are not going to be very impressive, and as long as you don't let unfriendly words from uninformed individuals discourage you, you are going to learn your skill. I've been making this game for a little bit over a year now, and make of that what you will, but personally I'm very happy with the skills that I've developed so far. And I'm still making progress in many ways, so future levels are going to be way better than this one, and it's only possible because I put in the time and effort and energy to learn all of these things myself, as opposed to letting an AI do it for me. What I really want to say is that there's so much more to life than just products. And if you view everything as a product that has to have some monetary value or that needs to be showed off, then I'm afraid you're missing out on a lot of what makes life special. Okay, but that's enough about art, let's get back to the gaming. So, I've done almost nothing to the animation of the main player character, and that's why if you've been paying close attention you might notice that the cape sometimes clips through the armor. It'll be fixed in the next update. So this bridge is very long and it's very difficult. In general, I'm going for a difficulty level that's quite a bit higher than that of modern Nintendo games like Mario Odyssey. Like, modern Nintendo games tend to ask you to create your own fun, but that approach just doesn't really work for me. Mario Galaxy 2 is the first console game that I ever played, and I've been waiting for a similar game ever since, but they still haven't made it. Mario games are just way too easy these days, and on the other side of the coin we have Crash Bandicoot, but while those games have well-designed levels and challenges, the movement is just too restricted for me. So for this game I created a Mario 64-like movement system that has more freedom than Mario 64. There are more buttons to press which all map to different moves. It is way easier to do triple jumps, and it's also easier to control your momentum in the air, because you fall a bit slower as long as you hold the button. And with all of this, I wanted to allow my game to have platforming sections that kind of resembled those of Crash Bandicoot, but which still work with this more free movement system. I'm pretty sure I got myself into a Rayman 1 situation where the levels are way more difficult than they should be, but I can't even tell because I got too good at the game. But when I'm going to do playtesting, I'll be very receptive to feedback on which sections are frustrating, which ones aren't, and I'll try to make things more player-friendly without completely killing the challenge and the design. In other words, I'm trying to make a Mario 64 ROM hack with my own movement system, my own camera and my own physics. And my own visuals and my own story and whatever. But the soul of the Mario 64 ROM hacks that I used to play as a kid, that is something I'm trying to capture. Developing an entire game by yourself is a difficult process and it's very time consuming, and there are many small things that I'm aware of that need to be addressed, but which have remained unchanged since the last video and even before that. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second, but first I want to talk a bit about the characters that I've been making. So for about a week, maybe 2 weeks, I decided to make a bunch of characters. This was during the time that I was making all of my buildings. So during that time I made a bunch of different characters and I did them all pretty quickly. Like, I spent about an hour on the face for each of them and an hour on the body and then maybe 1 to 2 hours on the clothing. So these are, again, not AAA characters, but they are characters for my game, and I think they are appropriate in terms of detail and general aesthetics, but you can also see these as just being more practice. Not everything in life is a product. Some things can just exist, and the truly valuable part was what you learned while making them. It's fun to make characters, and I'm gonna be making a lot more in the future. So right now I'm showing a couple of them, not all. The ones that I'm showing all kind of look the same, but there are gonna be more unique designs in the future. Of course, there's the dragon. His name is Yellen, and he's pretty big. There's a story reason why he's as big as he is, and you're going to save him. You're going to figure out what the reason is, and I already have the regular version of him. In fact, that's the first version that I made. I think that by now you probably have an impression of what this level is going to be like. It's a big open area with a bunch of towns and bridges and other things, and there are going to be some characters, there are going to be some enemies to fight. But if this level supposedly has everything, then why can't I just share a demo around? Am I so greedy that I need to charge money for it? No, it's because the game just isn't ready yet. But the next update is going to come with a demo that is going to be playable, and it'll be freely available. Before I wrote my new collision system and the enemy system, I did a lot of work on systems that I'm not showing in the video, but basically the game is mostly feature complete in terms of systems. I don't want to imply that the systems are complete as in they have all the bells and whistles, but the core is there for almost everything. There is a sound system, there is a loading and saving system, there is an NPC system, there is an enemy system, there are combat particles, the movement has been done for a few months at this point, there is a system that handles all the systems, and you get my point. But just like how having a functioning combat system doesn't mean that you have complex enemies with interesting attack patterns, having a bunch of systems doesn't mean that your game is actually complete in terms of content. In fact, large chunks of this content is missing, and I'm mostly talking about sound effects and music, and also dialogue and voice lines and quests and items to collect and meals to prepare. Yes, there is a cooking system, and it is tied to both the healing system and the leveling system. One form of content of which I do have sufficient material right now is levels. There are 3 levels, all 3 of them are pretty big, that's more than enough. My focus for the next couple of months is going to be exclusively on these things that are missing. Creating sound effects, creating music, creating quests, and all 3 of these levels have parts that are missing or parts that need to be reworked somewhat, and that is also something I'm going to be doing for the next update. Sound effects are especially important, as a lack of sound effects can by itself cause a game to feel empty and can make the combat feel wrong, or it can make the platforming feel jank. Sound effects are really important. I will be doing a disservice to both the game and to other people by giving people a version of the game where this crucial aspect is just entirely missing. To further illustrate my point about small things mattering a lot, look at games like Xenoblade 2 or Breath of the Wild. These are 2 of my favorite games ever, and much of my enjoyment from these games comes directly from the fact that the audio turns these otherwise digital environments into truly immersive experiences. But that's about all I wanted to say for this update. I'm gonna be working on my thesis very soon, after which I'm gonna graduate university, and I don't know what I'm gonna be doing afterwards, but I'll see. Up until then, the plan is simple. I'm going to be making a demo with 3 levels that are all available, that all have music and sound effects and everything else, all the quests and everything else that I think is necessary to make these levels fun to explore. And hopefully you'll all be there to play the game yourself, and hopefully you're going to enjoy it. Alright, bye bye.